right. You're listening to Do It Yourself Music Appreciation. Oh, shit. Fuck.
It's all good.
So do I have to clap again, dude?
No.
All right.
Get clapped.
All right. You're listening to Do It Yourself Music Appreciation. We are the rap nerds. Enter our spaceship. Welcome. This week, we're discussing Liquid Swords by the GZA. Good to see you guys.
Man.
You know, I love that our title of our program is, Do It Yourself Music Appreciation. And because as at least so far, at least one of us, right, for each album we pick, I don't know if the listeners really know this, but each week one of us picks the album that the next week we're going to have to study and then discuss. And each week, at least one of us absolutely loves the album that we picked so far, right? So that's what I love about this show. We don't really hate. It's not. This is an appreciation of excellence. And even on albums in the past where maybe I wasn't the biggest fan, I made it my business to find things that I did love and appreciate about the music. And this week, my pick was, again, Liquid Swords by GZA of the Wu-Tang Clan. And while GZA is not my absolute favorite MC ever, he's one of them. And this is, in fact, my favorite hip-hop album ever made. This, in my opinion, is that nothing ever affected me more deeply and more emotionally than this album. I can't tell you. We're going to go into why, but this is the nearest and dearest to my heart hip-hop album ever, and I put it in the top 5 greatest albums ever made, any genre of music ever. So welcome, guys. Good to see you again. I'm Ben. That's Dion.
Yo.
That's Gary. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
How'd you guys like this week of listening?
This was for me, I'll speak. So this is an album that Ben has been talking about as one of his favorite, if not favorite, albums for years now. And to that point, like obviously I've listened to this album several times, not nearly as many as Ben. But I never, and I've always felt like I appreciate GZA as the lyricist he is and like the genius he is, but I didn't really fully appreciate the album, like fully appreciate it until I gave it like a full list, like thorough listen this week. And there's some gems of lines. I started taking notes of like, oh, I like this line. And I got to a point where I forget what song it is. We'll get into it. But the entire verse was like, well, I mean, this whole verse is fire. Like, what am I going to pick out of it? You know what I mean? It's like, I found myself saying that, thinking that several times throughout. So, this was good. This was, I think the first time I listened to it for the week was that same day after we recorded last week, just to get the juices flowing and everything like that. So this is a good one. This is a good one, man. Gary, what do you think?
Gary, what'd you think, man?
I'm in the same place. I had so much fun listening to this album because this is one of those albums that Ben has been, would mention as like, yo, if you're looking for something to listen to that you're not jamming to right now, listen to this. And I'm like, yeah. I mean, like, probably excellent, but like, I'm going to keep listening to the things that I listen to because I'm a hillbilly, and, but like, then, this week I listened to it, the complete album. And I think I was sending you guys, messages on Hangouts, like, oh my God, what?
That was exciting. Fun. That was fun, man. That was a fun part of the week.
Yeah.
This would be my musical score if I were an ill criminal. It's a great album to be a criminal too.
That's very well put.
Yep, and it sounds like a movie, like a movie. You're listening to a movie. Yeah. So real quick, I think it would serve this process well to go into, like, we're talking about a rapper in particular named GZA the Genius from Wu-Tang Clan, but let's talk Wu-Tang real quick, right?
Let's do it.
This is a movement. This is not a rap group. I don't know. Were they first marketed as a rap group? Were they introduced to the world at large as a rap group? Of course. And what they are is a revolutionary movement. They were the thing. The introduction to the Wu-Tang Clan, to me, came well after their introduction to the world. I was a white kid from the burbs, you know, what we consider the burbs of New York City, you know, Rockaway Park. I knew what I knew through my brother. So all I really knew about hip hop was what my brother told me to listen to coming up. And that was A Tribe Called Quest. That was Das Effects. You know what I mean? It was like New York 90s, early 90s hip hop. And then I did not.
It's a good curriculum, by the way. That is an excellent curriculum.
Yeah,
absolutely. You know, and I was into my whole life. I cast a wide musical net, right? I'm a deadhead. I love Pink Floyd. I love Steely Dan. I love jazz. I love country. And I had a love for hip hop, but not an obsessive love. And it took Tribe Called Quest, you know, in 8th grade, I really got into Tribe. And it took me obsessing over them to really open my world up. And then you know, and Busta Rhymes. I loved Busta Rhymes in junior high school too. And then I get to high school, and I think it was the summer between 8th grade and 9th grade that my brother was driving me in his first car, his Eagle Vision.
The Eagle Vision.
Yo, the gold busted ass Eagle Vision. And he put on 36 Chambers, and he's like, you need to listen to this, and you need to appreciate what the fuck this is. You know what I mean? He's like, you need to pay attention. And so real quick, it opened my whole world up, Wu-Tang Clan. I became obsessed. And I have a very obsessive, addictive mind. So when I find something that sparks my imagination, I need to know everything about it. And I fall really deep, really quick into the rabbit hole of research. So I knew everything about Wu-Tang by the end of freshman year of high school. I literally was like a Wu expert just from that introduction to 36 Chambers. Like, what the how have I missed this? Like, I knew the song Method Man, but I didn't know what the fuck Wu-Tang was about until I sat down and listened to 36 Chambers. And, you know, we don't have to do a whole lesson on Wu-Tang, but what they did was revolutionize a few different things. They revolutionized the production front of things, right? Did menacing hip hop exist before them? Of course it did, right? You had in New York people like Cool G Rap, in Philly people like Schoolie D, in LA rap groups like NWA, you know, Dr. Dre. There was menacing violence already in hip hop, but what they did was make it dusty, funky, and the soundtrack was menacing. You know, you listen to the G-Funk era, which is like gangster rap over P-Funk music, which is from like the West Side, you know, from the early 90s death row scene in Cali. And those soundtracks are very slick and very, you could dance to that. You could groove, you could party to people being violent. There's no party in Wu-Tang's soundtrack. It is menacing, especially on the first album, these like haunted pianos, like old pianos. It sounds like a ghost playing a player piano. And it just all sounds.
And I have a note about that later on that I'll bring up specifically about that, like how menacing those sounds that we're hearing are. And totally. But I'll remind me, I'll get to that.
And real quick, I don't want to spend a whole, you know, because again, I could talk for 3 hours just about the impact that Wu-Tang had on the world and me. But so RZA of the Wu-Tang Clan, the main, you know, character in the story of Wu-Tang Clan, he revolutionized production, right? After 36 Chambers, everyone was trying to catch that, or not everyone, but, you know, groups like Mobb Deep changed their sound for their next album because of this. A lot of, you know, that haunting, menacing danger in the soundtrack, not just the lyrics, became, it like exploded after that, you know? So RZA's production and sampling and melody ideas coming from samples was revolutionary, and we'll get into it a little more, especially on this record. And not only did they revolutionize that, they also revolutionized the record industry and how you were going to be signed as a rapper and a rap group, right? So before this, if you signed a rap group, the label that signed a rap group would then have exclusive rights to anyone who wanted to go solo. They were going to be under the same label, right? RZA wasn't having it.
This was standard. This was standard.
No, there was no such thing as non-exclusive rap groups, right? RZA knowing what he had, and they came from nothing. Our show is called Do It Yourself Music Appreciation. No movement deserves do it yourself appreciation more than the do it yourself story of Wu-Tang Clan.
Seriously.
Right? They came from dirt, poor, nothing. When they first shipped this idea of 9 guys rapping in the same group, labels didn't even want to hear it. Like,
they were laughing them out of the.
They were laughing at them, and the single that they were laughing at became one of the biggest hits of the year when they finally put it out themselves. Right? Protect Your Neck.
Mm-hmm.
People didn't fucking know. The vision of where you could go and what you could do in hip hop music was so narrow, and they thought that was the limit until Wu-Tang showed you, no, motherfucker, we're going to do it the way we want and not compromise our vision, not compromise our sound, and not compromise every one of us getting the ability to go out and make as much as we want on our solo ventures.
But you know what? Just like anything that starts up, there's iteration there. They didn't just pop out, into existence fully formed. It's I thought it was pretty cool that the original, maybe the core group was GZA and his cousins. When they his cousins RZA and the Old Dirty Bastard.
Yes, sir.
As
they would call the All In Together Now crew.
Mm-hmm.
That's right, aka Force of the Imperial Master. That's
I didn't know that.
That's so funny.
That's dope.
And it's so it's following a theme here, right? It's starting a theme here.
Totally. Now, again, GZA he was the one of these 9 guys that actually had an album released before Wu-Tang formed.
Exactly.
It's a good album. It's called Words from the Genius. It was before he went by GZA. He was just the Genius, and he is a highly intelligent lyricist on that album. But you could tell he was being told how his songs were going to come out. Right? There was a level of input from the record company that signed him. I think it was Cold Chillin' Records. That he didn't have creative control, right? And for the most part, sorry to say, MCs did not have creative control.
Oh God, no.
Right? Especially by the early 90s, record companies were heavily involved with
It was formulaic. They knew exactly what they needed to do to get X amount of record sales and X amount of money.
Of people.
Yeah,
of course. So
they did the same thing to RZA too. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
We're not going to get much into that, but yeah, it was even worse with the whole I Love You, Prince Rakeem.
Yep.
Like it was. It's a fun song, but you look back at it and what RZA became, what Wu-Tang became, and it was fucking shameful.
They tried to turn him into a sex symbol that he did not want to do.
He didn't want that shit.
That shit failed.
They shot a music video and everything. It was crazy.
Corny. It was corny as fuck. I love it just from for history's sake to hear it.
Of course.
But it was corny, corny and shit. He failed. He had a failed career, and so from the ashes of these 2 awesomely talented cousins who tried to make it and then, steered wrong by record companies, their creative process hindered, came this movement, right, of Wu-Tang where, no, we're going to do it ourselves. We're surrounded but in a borough that's largely been forgotten and not acknowledged with incredible, they were friends from childhood, and all of them.
No, not all of them.
Well,
but
there was some tension and some static.
We don't need to get into that, but yeah.
Right, but they all knew each other.
Yeah, yes,
right? And before the static, they were friends.
Yeah, that's fair.
So,
that's fair.
I just want everyone, you guys, anyone listening, to think about how God-given that circumstances that in these projects that are right near each other, right? This tiny little circle
Stapleton and
communities, Stapleton and Park Hill came 9 and of these 9 MCs, I'd say 7 of the greatest MCs to ever touch the mic ever, period, hands down. 7 of the illest ever came from this little community, right? And at any rate, when Wu-Tang dropped, it changed everything. From then on, people were trying to catch Wu-Tang for a good minute, right? And their solo ventures, each one of these 9 dudes had a completely different style. And that's what's crazy. It doesn't work on paper, bro. If you never heard 36 Chambers and then you heard GZA rap, you heard Ghostface rap, you heard ODB rap, you heard Method Man rap, you'd be like, yeah, they're all good, but that wouldn't work together. You know what I mean? That wouldn't make sense. A cohesive project.
Yeah.
And before this, rap groups, right? they all had similar styles. Even groups like for instance, Love, De La Soul. They rap, they have different flows, but they share a vibe, right? Tribe Called Quest, they have completely different flows and cadences, but they share a vibe. These 9 dudes have completely different styles.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow they came together under RZA's production, and just it was an impact that was felt around the world.
And it worked.
Right?
It worked.
So this album that we're getting into is GZA's first solo album under the Wu-Tang Clan, blanket. He was already.
I mean, you could call it GZA's first, because when on the other one he was the Genius.
The Genius. He still
there you
goes by Genius, but now he's even on this album it's called Genius / GZA.
Right.
So again, his second solo album, his first Wu-Tang album, and it is, it came after 36 Chambers, multi-platinum. Method Man's first album, To Cal, multi-platinum. Old Dirty Bastards, Return to the 36 Chambers, multi-platinum, I believe. And then Raekwon's Only Built for Cuban Links, considered one of the most classic street albums ever made, super influential, killed it. I think multi-platinum. Again, I don't know the sales. And from what I remember, this album eventually went platinum, but it went gold, this one, when it dropped. Now, so Wu-Tang was such a strong movement that they released, I would consider every one of these albums, and basically everyone after that, underground music, right?
Sure.
Underground meaning no compromise. No, like, okay, yeah, we'll put a hook on here of, some R&B chick that's going to get radio play. They've
like, nah, we're getting Blue Raspberry again.
We're going to get Blue Raspberry. There's no compromise. They've never once, even on their most commercial sounding song, which I would say later on was Gravel Pit, right? Like,
yeah,
even that sounds pretty freaking underground to me, man. They really never.
Yeah, right. It still sounds like music you skateboard to at night, right?
Yep.
If you're not actively listening to it while you're cracking the safe, robbing a bank, then you're listening to it skateboarding at night.
Totally.
That's the category it falls into in my mind.
Totally. So, all right. So GZA comes out 1995, right? I didn't know about it in 95. 95, I was just waking up to like bust. I think, when did Coming come out? 96?
Coming was 95. I think late 95. I'm
fifth grade, kind of right?
Yeah.
That was a good vintage.
So like that's what I knew about rap. Busta Rhymes, some Tribe, some, whatever my brother was playing. So I discovered this album a few years after it came out. So let's talk about GZA.
Yeah, dude, that must have been like, you must have known about honeybees and then you learned about murder hornets.
Basically, I didn't know.
Both fly.
Yep. It's kind of what it was, man. That's a good analogy, Gary. I didn't know music sounded like this. You know what I mean? And I've been accused of being snobby, and I'll take it. All right, I get it. I'm very opinionated, but I don't know how you could study and fall deep into the Wu-Tang rabbit hole and then not look at other things going on in music and not judge it.
Yeah.
Dude, when I was falling deep into the Wu-Tang stuff, by like 2002, I was obsessed. You know what I mean? Like, just obsessed. When Nelly dropped, I remember thinking, man, like, yo, you people are lost. I remember like, yo, like, we got kids, like dudes our age, like bumping Nelly. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? That's how I felt. I'm sorry. I know I sound like a hater, right? But like,
yeah.
I do. I know I'm a hater. Fuck it. But like, I don't know.
I'm no fan of Nelly. Don't get me wrong, but
I just, this because I knew that stuff like this existed.
That's fair.
That like stuff, thought-provoking type of lyrics, and GZA is very exemplary of that. Like, lyrics that I've heard my whole life, and then like a few years ago, after the 180th billionth time I've heard it, I go, oh shit.
That happened to me so many times this week when I was listening to this shit.
Dude, again, we're gonna bounce around on If You're Living in the World Today. He wraps up a bar going, Father, you see King the police. Right?
What's the line?
Father, you see King the police. And I just thought, like, whatever, I don't know what that means. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, whatever, I don't know. Because he's not, he's making an anagram with the first letters of Father, you see King, fuck the police, right? Like, and it's like, and it takes thinking about and going, oh, okay, so the letter U, the letter king, father, you know what I mean? And
the complexity is just
it's like a riddle for you
yeah.
to unravel. And he's saying fuck the police.
There's
But it
another
took me years to figure that out.
There's another 4 bars from that same song that exemplifies that too. It goes, my rhyme gross weight vehicle combination was too heavy for the Chevys to chase out the station. Double-edged was the guillotine that beheaded it. Gassed up, fucking with some regular unleaded shit. Yo, that whole thing is just about him. It's like, yo, he's pulling up. He saw the cop, but he's carrying so much fucking weight. Like he's like, yo, he just peels out. Cop's gone. And I don't know, like it goes beyond that, but like just like the point is it just makes you think, like, right, like you're sitting there and like I don't know if we've ever talked about, if anyone's talked about a category of hip hop of like, I don't know, I'll call it rewind hip hop, right? Or like back, like, you know, the type of hip hop where you listen to it and you just have to backtrack 10 seconds and keep hearing that line over and over. He's like, wait, is that what he meant? Hold on, I gotta hear that again. Wait, what?
Totally.
So many times that happened, including those set of lines. And even more so, a line that I think ends the song. We go, sleep holes put strangle on commercial angle, microphone cord tangled up from being star spangled. That shit is fucking deep. That's basically saying, it's like, yo, all your fucking commercial hip hop bullshit, like y'all are too caught up in the fucking American capitalist, you know, system, like capitalist system, to really care about the music. So like, I'm gonna keep doing this while y'all can trip over yourselves. Go have fun with that. You know?
Damn, like time 1 through time 99 of listening to it, I'm just nodding my head thinking that sounds great. That sounds so cool. You know, like you don't even have to get in, well, for me at least, I don't even have to get into it and understand it and get down to that level to love this album. But then finally this week with you know, just like really trying to get in there, start noticing stuff, man.
Yo, and that's the thing. Some people don't want to, right? That's why I realized, and I had to come to accept that. And again, I accepted it way later on that, like, yeah, I am a snob, but I represent a minority in listeners. A lot of people don't want to sit there and be like, I wonder what he meant by that. They want to know what you meant and then move on to the next song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Some people don't have that some people don't have the desire to dig deep and be like,
especially these days. Where people have the attention spans of a fucking fruit fly. I mean,
gnat. Yeah. And they, you know, so, but this is one of those albums. If it, you know, hopefully you've heard it if you're listening to us talk about it. But if you haven't,
and if you are, then you're probably feeling offended.
Yeah.
By us talking down to you.
But you know,
ignorant fools.
Spend some time with this album, right? Like this is album meant, in my opinion, for headphones, for like, this is something for you to listen to alone. Maybe, you know, I don't partake anymore, but if you do smoke weed, light one up and sit down and let it come, you know, this is not meant for you know, it can serve well for background music. I've put it on a million times while I'm doing artwork or something like that, but to fully process what is said in this album, it requires, you know, no distractions. And GZA, to his credit, he's one of those guys where, you know, usually when you talk about a complex rapper, you're talking about complex rhyme schemes, right? Like internal rhymes where and choppy flows and like switching up the flow, or you know, patterns and all. You know, GZA has a few patterns that he's been sticking to his whole career. He never reinvented his delivery.
but those patterns are in themselves complex, and that's
totally complex, but complex yet easy to digest.
Absolutely.
Right? So you listen to a new Eminem album, and you're gonna have to rewind a million times just to hear like what millionth word he said between the last sentence. You know what I mean? Like there's so much there to pick apart. And you'd have to read the lyrics to really know what he's saying sometimes. Whereas GZA, you hear every one of these words. These words are very cryptic. And these words don't necessarily mean what he's saying. And what he's saying is probably twice removed from a double entendre. But it's all there for you to hear first listen. I love that about him. You know what I mean? He shares that lane with Doom, where they're not at all the same type of rapper. But they have a flow where you don't get lost. You're never like, like what? Wait, what was that? You know what I mean? Like, even Dion, you and I share a love for Royce the 5'9". I have to listen to Royce a million times to catch some of these nooks and crannies that he hits in these pockets. You know what I mean? That's not the case here. This is, at least with GZA, right? Now, the other MCs, do, you know, have a little more complexity to them on this album. And so that's, you know, that's my intro to why I love this album, is because GZA sparked my creativity. At first, that's what it was. It's like, I remember hearing Method Man on 36 Chambers talk about each one of these members of Wu-Tang and what they mean. And when he said, GZA, the genius, he's the head. You know, we form like Voltron and GZA happens to be at the head. Doesn't mean he's the leader, but he's the one who gave knowledge to
He's the mind, exactly.
He kind of turned RZA onto the 5% way of thinking, 5% Nation of Islam, and you know, he's a literal. I really consider him as genius with these lyrics, you know what I mean? So I know I'm long-winded here. I'd really love to hear, you know, because I'm going to get into it. But what did you guys think of the production side of this?
So that's that guy. I'll go on. You look like you had a thought, but that was that. I did want to
Gary, what did you think of the beats?
So the beats were, I mean, they were crime beats. I loved them. You know, I keep going back to that, right? But like,
menacing.
It sounded. Menacing. I don't know a ton about you know, how music is made, and you know where his samples you know might have come from, and you know how the technical side of how he put this stuff together. But I love nodding my head to it. You know, and it's some of the and the thing is, it traces back to some of my other favorite Wu-Tang stuff, because obviously because of the shared DNA there, and it's there. It's just like it fits in with it fits in with the way that the rhyming is happening on this album. I'm steadily nodding my head and listening and catching more and more every time, because the music is so enjoyable,
captivating. So Wu-Tang, like one of its staples is sampled kung fu movies, right? So from day one, when the world was first introduced to Wu-Tang Clan, they had these snippets from these old Wu-Tang Shaolin kung fu movies. Ha, chop, chop. If what you say is true, Shaolin and the Wu-Tang could be dangerous. Do you think your Wu-Tang sword can defeat me? Right? So like, just that alone set them apart from everyone. It sparked your creativity right away. It put you in this like, and you start to appreciate the MC own martial artists, right? That each one has their, you know, one's the tiger, one's the monkey, one's the, you know, toad style, immensely strong, whatever you want to say. Each one of them has their own almost kung fu style, right? They're like a superhero group, or the Avengers or some shit, right? So GZA, right, on this album, they chose to not sample a kung fu series of movies. They sample a samurai movie. The Lone Wolf and Cub series of movies. I think they sample. So it's Shogun Assassin for the American audience, but it was originally released as Lone Wolf and Cub. If you have not seen these, if you're a fan of GZA and you haven't seen these movies, go out, find a copy, and watch. It is the most bloody,
it's so
savage, insane samurai swordsman movie. Like just hard to watch.
I think it was based on a manga thing too. I think, right? Originally, it was a manga, and then they made like the movie, like the original
in
movie
the 70s.
And I believe so. Yeah.
I did not know that. You learn a new thing every day. But check out Shogun Assassin, especially the first one is sampled heavily in this, and you'll even hear some beats that are sampled directly from that movie, which so cool.
So and for I guess I wouldn't even say younger audiences, because this movie is it's like 20 years old, but Kill Bill
heavily influenced,
especially like, I mean, the last scene in Kill Bill, they're literally watching the Lone Wolf of Cub. And
RZA obviously is directly involved in the scoring of Kill Bill.
He scored it.
So you know, real quick, the reason I think it's so appropriate that a samurai movie rather than a kung fu movie was the sample source of these cutscenes, if you will, in this album, is because GZA, of all of them, to me represents the samurai economy of motion, right? Kung fu is about almost distraction, right? The movement to you know, it's flash, it's pizzazz, flash pizzazz. No, but you know what I mean. It's an element of showmanship.
Champagne.
Yeah. So there's an element of showmanship in Kung Fu, whereas GZA of all of them, he is the least showman. He is
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
a calculated economy of motion assassin, right? Each move is as efficient as possible. He's not going to be acrobatic all over the mic. You know, he's not going to hit you like that, right? He's going to be calmly, complexly, but also simple. It's simple yet complex. So, you know what I mean? Like, it's slow enough for you to hear how magnificent it is. So this song, Fourth Chamber, you know, it had a music video. The fact that this album had any type of notoriety, let alone sold as well as it did, that is a testament to the strength of the Wu-Tang name, right? Because this is such just a decidedly non-commercial album. There is nothing
head to toe. Like
there is nothing on this where you're going, oh, I could see that on the radio, right? I could see that like playing next to, you know, listen, we love Biggie Smalls. He's considered the king of New York. I absolutely love him. But even he had Juicy, right? Like that song was a pop success, right? This song found success in the same, or this song and this album found success in the same year that Juicy came out, bro. That's crazy. There's nothing here that represents anything commercial, right? So this song, you have Ghostface, you have the first appearance of who I consider to be the all-time greatest Wu affiliate, meaning not one of the original members, but is down with the crew and has the Wu-Tang name attached to him, and that's Killer Priest. That second verse, I judge wisely, as if nothing ever surprised me. Lounging between two pillars of ivory, I'm lively. Yo, that's his introduction to the world.
Sick.
And he's on at least one other track on this.
He completely has the bonus track.
Oh yeah,
the Bible. It's all him, and it's not even produced by RZA. But I'll get into that later on.
Well, that album appeared on his debut album. Also. That song debuted on his. But hey, and that was an introduction to, and he as another MC who, if you have the time, go fucking listen to Killer Priest. His first album, Heavy Mental. He's on some other shit. I like MCs who are on some other shit. You know what I mean? They don't necessarily, and that's what Wu-Tang is. They don't talk about what anyone else talks about. And they might, you know, be from the same world, but the way they talk about that world is from a completely different pair of glass. And that's really what I love about this era of Wu-Tang, right? Because they blessed us with that first album, and then you got to look into each one, well, not each one of them, right? So it took a while for Deck's first album to be released, and You Gods and Master Killers, like they you know, those albums came out a little later on, but you got to look into what a Method Man solo album would sound like. You got to look at what Raekwon would sound like solo, you know, and each one of them, what I love about it is I consider each one of these first 4 or 5 solo albums Wu-Tang Clan albums, because all of them appear, right? Or at least, and this one, and I think Raekwon's album, and I think Iron Man, Ghostface's first album, they all appear. They're all there. It's just one guy gets the look, one guy gets the spotlight, and they all come in and support him.
So Starks from this interlude was who?
Ghostface.
Ghostface. Yes, Tony Starks is one of Ghostface's aliases.
That's his big alias, and so you know, RZA, the genius of RZA, not obviously GZA is, but RZA's
a genius. He's a genius.
RZA,
lowercase genius.
Speaking shit, what do you say?
All right. So the genius of RZA's work is that he backs each one of these artists differently. The beats are completely different, right? They still have RZA's touch, but this one sounds the most to me like a menacing movie, like almost like a movie score. A lot of these tracks, they don't really reflect the state of hip hop in 1995, right? It's like a whole different universe of,
it almost
soundscapes.
Is, I'm not going to compare the two, because obviously these are two completely different albums, but there are some similarities between this and Late Registration, what we were talking about a couple episodes ago, with that like sort of cinematic kind of like, you know, the beat itself. And this is what I was going to get into before, when Gary started bringing up the beat. The beats on this, I think part of the reason why I never really fully appreciated this album as much as I should have, and don't get me wrong, like I said before, I've appreciated this album throughout the years, but not fully as much as I have this week. And I think part of that is because every time I listen to it, I feel like I like my mind subconsciously gets lost in the beats because it's so fucking good, and it's so like I hate to keep using the word layered, but like they are.
They
and
are.
if you look at the like at the samples for some of these songs, like RZA will take, and he does this throughout his entire career, he'll take like a note from a triangle from a song from the 50s, put that in one of his songs here, and he'd either loop it and that'll be the entire track, or he just puts it in one time, but it's that memorable note that you always remember. And he's like, well, where's that from? That's got to be taken from like, you know, one of the songs that he's sampling the whole thing. Say, no. He used that one note from this one of the song. And then 10 seconds later in the song, another similar thing where it's just like a, you know, like a 2-beat thing from another. He'll just take all that and layer it. And, you know, there's going to be something like, you know, going throughout the song, like a consistent beat. But like the way he just like kind of like, it's just, it's your ears like are almost listening to what, like, I don't know, like, because I've been editing this, like, I'm, you know, you see like the sound strips and everything when you put your timeline together. Like, as I'm listening to it, I can visualize, like, I see he has like 50 strips of just things that he just like it's just So
he's a mad scientist.
He's a mad scientist. He is a mad fucking scientist. And I think that's part of the reason why I never really like, you know, not never. Why it took until now to really like pay attention to the lyrics is because the beats are just like they're distracting in a good way. You know?
And one thing I'll say about this solo album, and I think you have to say this about every single one of these first batch of Wu-Tang solo albums, is they are as good as they are, not only because they have one of the illest MCs ever rocking on them, but because RZA produced it.
Goes without saying.
It's almost like each one of these was like it was GZA and RZA. It was Raekwon and RZA. It was Method Man and RZA that made this what it is. And it's, you know, so.
Well, how crazy is it, Benny, that like talking about geography and where this stuff was happening, right? Like going back to that moment, you're driving the car with your brother, you know, your brother's high school car, right? You're in there, you're being introduced to some of this music. This music was being thought up and made like 20 minutes from you as the crow flies. You know, it's like it's Brownsville, Brooklyn, right? That's where RZA spent a lot of his time.
That's where GZA's from.
And ODB, right?
ODB and GZA and Master Killer.
They would go back and forth between the boroughs, but Brownsville was one of those places.
Totally.
And RZA, you know, he grew up in some serious sitch, right?
Yes.
Like some serious poverty,
serious struggle.
You know, like many, way too many people in an apartment kind of poverty. That's some wild stuff. This was happening really close, right? The fuel behind this kind of music was happening so close to, you know, where you grew up, where I grew up, Benny, and like, you know, same borough. Like, you know, like my parents would drive me down the Belt Parkway to, you know, to Midwood and to, you know, to Park Slope and, you know, to hang out with you, Dion, and Alex. But like, it's like just driving across these neighborhoods where this music was being concocted and all this crazy amount of volatility was happening in these people's lives. It's cool, man.
It's incredible to think about, quite frankly. Honestly.
It is. It's a special connection that you know, I feel to the music when knowing this history now.
Totally, man. I love that take on it. So not all right. So let's get into why, like, right. So I said we're gonna get into why this is this is my favorite album, right? Why I hold it above all else in my heart in hip hop, right? Because that's saying, right? And that's saying I hold this album dearer in my heart than 36 Chambers, than Midnight Marauders, than, you know, Stakes is High by De La Soul. These are like, you know, these are like the tapestry that make you know, that weave through my soul, you know, all of these albums. Why is this one? Because I believe let me collect my thoughts before I say it, right? So this is such an elevated form of Wu-Tang, just 2 years after 36 Chambers. Is 36 Chambers more of a complete package? Possibly, right? Is it a more important album? Without a doubt, right? I don't necessarily take importance and impact and put it within, you know, what's my favorite necessarily, right?
Sure, yeah,
like, for instance, just look at Wu-Tang Forever, which is my favorite Clan album, right? I recognize it is an imperfect album. right? There are way more things to poke at and kind of say, well, that's a move I wouldn't make on Wu-Tang Forever comparatively to 36 Chambers, which is like this concise, incredible, perfect piece of art that changed the world, right? But there are elements of it where they're so much more elevated as MCs that I prefer to listen to Forever over 36 Chambers,
Yes.
right? So this album, GZA elevated so high. It's the beats are, I think, RZA's best beats ever on this album. GZA's rhyming are GZA's best verses ever on this album. You have Inspect the Deck, right? Who I consider, and people, I don't give a fuck what you think, Inspect the Deck is the MVP of the Wu-Tang Clan. He actually, you know, of the whole clan as an MC, not necessarily the maker of my favorite albums, but he is my favorite MC in Wu-Tang Clan. And he's all over this album, just slaying every verse he gets on. Yo, I feel like he's a huge part of this album, just because when he contributes to a song, he comes in like an assassin, right? Wu-Tang, a lot of them have said he's the guy who made them go in and rewrite their lyrics, because he just came in and just killed just destroyed. He's like a warrior,
because he was sitting back and watching them play themselves.
Yo, he took them to court. Yeah, so if we could hear, and that's what I love about this album, man. It's a Wu-Tang album, right? Some other dudes get the shine too. Deck just murders this shit. It's one of the most memorable verses of his whole career on a GZA album.
What's also memorable about that verse, which I was thinking about as I was listening? It's almost like an interlude. It's kind of in the middle of the song, but towards the end. But like the whole beat switches up for him because they recognize he's on a whole different level.
Yo,
exactly.
It falls out. Maybe if you could start. I'm sorry. I know for the listener, go listen to the whole song. It's incredible. But just like where, you know, at tapering off from where Master Killer comes out, seek him for a serum to cure him, right around, you know, right a little before that, and then just hear what happens when Deck comes in, the dramatic entrance of Inspect the Deck. Bro, Inspect the Deck is just the definition of beast mode, right? Here's this guy, right? Yo, you're in a rap group with Method Man and Ghostface Killer and these personalities that, you know, what they have, maybe he doesn't have. But what he has is a verbal attack and lyricism and rhyme complexity above all of them. He's the illest MC in the group, and he never gets that shine, okay? I'm sorry, Wu-Tang fans. Inspect the Deck is the illest one of all of them. Listen to 36, listen to Forever, listen to the W. He has the best verses by far. I'm not going to say by far. I love all of them. But he is the MVP of the Wu-Tang Clan. Maybe he didn't put out the best solo work. I love his first solo album.
But this shit now with Czarface is making up for all that shit.
And by far, the greatest side project in Wu-Tang history is the career and the incredibly successful underground career of Czarface. And we're gonna do an episode.
We're doing a Czarface episode for sure.
You know, but Deck is that guy, man, and he's such an unsung hero. He gets lost in that conversation. When people go, "Who's the illest?" He gets lost in that conversation, man.
And he has probably the best intro into a Wu-Tang song of anyone with his first few bars on Triumph.
Dude, I think that's the greatest verse. Yo, I might say, if you said,
I'm having trouble calling that up to mine. Can we
bomb a top? You want to?
I bomb a top? Yeah.
Oh,
you want to listen
to
Triumph? Okay. So, yo, that's I think Deck's verse on Triumph might be the greatest verse ever spit in hip hop history. I don't give a fuck, man. That is rap superhero shit.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the type of song where, you know, if you recall, there was a time when we were kids where I would rap a lot of, like, it was mostly lyrics from The Coming and When Disaster Strikes, but I would rap some lyrics until you guys would tell me to stop, and then I wouldn't stop, and then Alex would tape record me and then play it back so I know how bad it sounds, and then I would stop. But that was one of those songs, like, that is an unforgettable set of lyrics, so impactful.
Yeah, and can I get at least a consensus? Like, what do you think about what I'm saying? That this MC does not get the props and the
I totally agree.
regards. And I think that has to do with the fact, right? and again, we're taking a detour here, but his first album was supposed to come out, I believe, in 96. And all of those tapes that he recorded for that album got flooded in a basement and destroyed. So his debut didn't come out till, I believe, 99 or two, after forever, right? Like maybe 98, 99, 2000, something like that. It was called Uncontrolled Substance. It's a great album, excellent album. But I think he missed his door. You know what I mean? When you could be so underground yet so successful because of the strength of the Wu-Tang name, that kind of ended in 97, sadly, right? And I don't know if you guys know the story behind that, but it ended abruptly, right? They were on this meteoric rise. And by the time Forever came out, they were triple platinum. You know what I mean? And then there was an incident at the Summer Jam concert of 97 where they kind of were told, you got to come off tour. They were touring Europe, hugely successful tour. And Hot 97 said, you have to come off tour and play Summer Jam. If you don't, we're not going to play you on the radio. And Hot 97 was the gatekeeper to success at that point. If you weren't played on Hot 97, you weren't going to be multi-platinum. You just weren't. You're right. You weren't going to have success, commercial success.
And that's nationwide. Hot 97 is a New York regional radio station, but that is a nationwide thing. It's true.
And I'd say that's changed in the internet era. You could blow up on your own YouTube fame. Sure. But back then, if you weren't being played on Hot 97, you were going to get, you weren't going to be successful. So what do? They go back, they play Summer Jam, and Ghostface gets on the mic and goes, I just got to say it. At Summer Jam, I just got to say it. Fuck Hot 97. Such a fucking gangster way to ruin it.
That's peace, that's love, all that good shit.
But what happened? I don't know if you guys noticed this, but Wu-Tang Clan did not get played on Hot 97 after 1997 for a long time. So
some petty bullshit.
It's bullshit. It sucks. The whole thing is dirty on Hot 97's part.
It's super shitty.
But Inspector Deck did, he never got the light shined on him the way I think it should have been in that first movement of Wu-Tang solo releases, right? So he got lost in the shuffle, in my opinion, of the main narrative of greatest MCs of all time. He belongs in that conversation. Maybe he's not the greatest ever in your eyes. To me, he's the illest member of the Wu-Tang.
You know what's funny, and this will be the last thing on the deck, and we'll get back to GZA. But if the Wu-Tang show on Hulu, Gary, I don't think you started watching it. I know Ben watched it. But the person that plays Deck is Joey Badass, and that's interesting because they're kind of opposites in certain ways, right? Like Deck was a person who, like, he had everything in front of him to get his solo career going, release a solo album. He recorded shit, but unfortunate things kind of halted that to the point where he kind of got fucked. Whereas Joey Badass was kind of on the opposite end. Like he was a person who he was also sought after, but because we're living in a new era. And you have SoundCloud and all that kind of stuff. He straight up didn't want, he had record companies wanting him, and he's like, no, I'm not ready yet. I don't want to sign with you. I don't want to sign with you yet. Like he took his time before he came out with his solo his solo effort, and he kind of took advantage of the times that Wu-Tang couldn't take advantage of back then. And I just I didn't know or I didn't remember exactly the whole circumstances about Deck, but in thinking about it now, that casting of Joey Badass to play him is really interesting when you think about it.
That is really interesting.
Right?
That kind of puts a couple of thoughts together with a dotted line in my mind, Dion. And I wonder if this is it actually makes a lot of sense that something like that would happen to, I don't know Inspector Deck's life story, and I don't know his history. I just know that he rolled with these musicians that came from Brownsville and Staten Island and all over the boroughs and came from poverty. And reading Riz's book, the Tao of Wu, he has this anecdote in there, right? And it's just it ties right into Inspector Deck's, all of his work getting flooded out in the basement. And that's just things happening to you, right? That's what poverty, one of the effects of poverty, things just happen to you that you cannot control. When he moved to Brooklyn, this was an anecdote, he talks about his first good friend, somebody an older kid took him under his wing, kind of saw the spark in him and taught him a lot of things. And when he first moved to the neighborhood, their entire apartment, he was living with family, their entire apartment got cased. Like all their stuff was stolen, like almost immediately, their furniture, shit like that. It was like a tragedy for them. And it turns out that this kid who took him under his wing was the guy who cased their apartment when they first moved in. It
Dirty,
sucks,
man.
right?
Terrible.
But it's just like a thing that happens, right? That's just absolutely derails life, right? If you're living below the poverty line. And I don't know if that was the case with Inspect the Deck, but that's just some shit that might happen, right?
But I think the moral to that is shit happens and it's up to you, right? Like, what are you gonna do about it, right? Okay, this shit happened. Life happens to you. Life will always happen to you. A series of unfortunate events will occur in your life, no matter who the fuck you are, right?
Yeah.
What are you gonna do now that it happened? Are you gonna become the victim of your circumstance, or are you going to create new circumstances for you? So that's the story of Wu-Tang.
I was just about to say, man, that is exactly the story of Wu-Tang, like in a nutshell. Like that's it.
They did the impossible. They really achieved the impossible.
Doing the impossible. Like they're still one of the most relevant names in music worldwide. It's crazy.
They've reached a point where their brand is stronger than their record sales.
Absolutely.
At this stage of what people are listening to, they might not be
the most. You
got
all kinds of people wearing W's.
Yep.
For sure, man. All right, so I had to take that. I was planning on it, by the way, talking about Inspect the Deck at length, because this dude just needs more love and respect than he gets. And he's respected. Don't get me wrong. Woo heads love him, but if you're not a Woo head, you probably don't know who he is, and that's pretty sad. You know what I mean? Like that's pretty fucked up, because he's so immensely talented. So the album is pretty concise, right? We were talking about last week how KRS's album Criminal Minded, what Gary said his one thing that he wish it could have been was longer, right? I think this album is such a great playing length. It's a start. I think I'm gonna guess an hour.
Just under an hour. It's like 55 minutes.
Yeah,
just under an hour.
That's with the bonus. So without the bonus.
Longer. I was also wishing this was longer.
You wish this was
once
longer?
it's done, it's like I want more of this exact thing.
I don't know. I thought it was complete, and I'll go even further. I actually thought
sure.
I thought the last track, the bonus track, while in itself is really good. It's really good. I easily see why it's a bonus track. Like I kind of wish that not wish, like the original release was the original release, so it was meant to be. But the way I Got You Back ends, like the way
that
first
really
of all,
does sound like a completion.
Exactly. The song itself is a great completion to the album. And the way it ends is that fucking scene from Shogun Assassin with the
that's the best soundbite on.
It's great. It's great. I remember the scene from the movie.
I interrupted you, Dion. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. But and it ends with that. Like that's a perfect fucking ending. So I think I'm not shitting on it. If I guess this is like, if I have to say my one negative thing of the album is that, but it's not even a negative, because again, it's a bonus. It's meant to be a bonus. It wasn't like the song wasn't produced by RZA. GZA doesn't appear on it at all. It's a Killer Priest song, basically.
But what a cool marketing strategy, right?
Yeah.
So the Wu-Tang movement, up until it got fractured, right? Like if you follow the Wu-Tang story, sometime in the 2000s, everything got really fucked up, in my opinion. Like there was no longer an actualized vision. It was everyone got scattered, and maybe the need to be your own successful person started to trump the strength of the Wu-Tang movement,
which eventually was gonna.
It was, money. Once money gets involved, and once you start tasting, exactly, right? I understand that, but what a cool marketing strategy back then, right? We have this unknown, this guy. He's part of a group called Sons of Man, they're a great group, great releases. I like their stuff a lot, but he, in my opinion, was the strongest member at the time. We got this artist, right? He's going to drop. He didn't drop for the next few years, by the way. I believe Heavy Mental came out in 98, maybe. But they're like, let's introduce the world to him on the Genius, like, right? One of the core founding members groups. Why don't you see what's in store for you coming next from this unknown guy, right? I think it's like a really cool marketing strategy. You know what I mean? Yeah. Killer Priest is a really unbelievable rapper.
Dope.
Yeah.
You know, what's a standout thing that I remembered from and I keep thinking of context with this album. I'm thinking about, what I learned from reading RZA. Do you guys remember the MTV Cribs with the Wu-Tang house?
The Wu Mansion.
The Wu Mansion.
I don't remember the cribs of the Wu Mansion. No,
It was
Well,
I
great.
need to see this.
maybe here's why, right? Because it was like the most generic big house, right?
Yep.
It's like, here's a big ass house somewhere, right? Could be just anywhere, but it's just, this is the
Yeah.
biggest freaking house, right? It's got a view, it's got balconies, it's got all these places for people to chill, and people are just chilling all over it. The entire Wu-Tang clan comes there to hang out.
It's where they were recording the W, I believe. I believe,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, so like RZA gets this house, and everybody, the way he explained it, everybody's like, oh, let's be in Manhattan, let's be in the city, right? The city's the place to be. And his philosophy was, no, let's just get the hell away. Let's get the hell away and just, have a place to be, to be us and to like, kind of get in our own little bubble and, and it's
no distractions, or at least less distractions.
Go deep with the mentality that they have and energy they have. It's cool, but it was the most random. I mean, it was like a big house, right? And this is a big house coming from a kid that grew up in apartments, right? Like, big house is the dream, right? Just get the biggest freaking house, mad space and lots of sunlight. Doesn't matter where it is.
You did it.
Necessarily.
Three of us, you did it.
I'm living in my own Wu Mansion right now.
Hell yeah, man.
Charlie.
I feel you. And they've, RZA, they, and specifically RZA, has had this kind of philosophy dating back to even this album, like, the sort of like, let's get to a space where just all of us like just chilling, like get our minds like all in the album. This album was recorded in fucking RZA's basement, and it's got that sound, like you could tell, Yes. But I mean, it's veering off what you were saying, Gary. My bad. But the point is, like, they always had that philosophy of like, like whatever we do, and to Ben's point, like at some point that did kind of like fracture a little bit, but up until a point, they all had the mentality of like, no matter what, like, whatever we do together, we're gonna do together. Like we can venture out and do our own thing, but when we have a project and we have something that's supposed to be Wu-Tang, we're gonna be in the same place. We're gonna chill. We're gonna do it. We're gonna get
that's
the shit
right.
done.
They didn't dilute it. They didn't bring on, they didn't bring Justin Bieber into it, and record some radio tracks.
Not yet.
Not yet.
That didn't happen
not
yet.
During the era of
I don't want to get into that.
I
don't want to talk
during
about
the
that.
Wu Mansion era. This is post Wu Mansion.
And I would say post Wu Mansion, right? So that was for the W. They were recording at that Wu Mansion.
I do remember that.
So like, they came out with Iron Flag after that, an excellent album. I love Iron Flag personally. But then I would say that it got to the point where every release, when the clan reformed, it seemed like maybe they weren't as devoted to the good of the group as they once were. And again, I love the Wu-Tang Clan and I've listened to those albums, but they don't hold a place in my heart the way everything up until Iron Flag did, because it's felt like maybe they were coming into the studio at different times. Maybe they weren't really hearing out what the other person was saying before. And that's just my assumption. I don't know if that's a fact, but it just felt a little more fractured and a little less family oriented. You know what I mean? But I don't want to stay too negative because I fucking love Wu-Tang Clan. So
you mean it wasn't like a family listen? You can't get together with your wife and kids and listen to it the same
No, this is not
Chambers.
This ain't that, Chief.
Yo, can I talk? Actually, this is interesting. Can I talk about the first time I heard this album? Because it wasn't when I got into Wu-Tang. Okay, It was before. And I this just came into my mind. I didn't even have this memory until
no notes.
Yo, so when I was a very fortunate, privileged person who got to go to summer camp in the summers. You guys would remember I would disappear for the summer. I was probably like 10 or 11, and my counselor in camp would play music that I was too young to really appreciate. But it was like I was like scared and homesick, and then he puts on the intro to this album, which is literally like a sample from this samurai movie of a child talking about his father decapitating people, and it was so scary at the time. I didn't even know it was Wu-Tang or GZA. I was just like, yo, like I'm very scared. Like this is scaring me. This is like the beginning of a horror movie. It sounded like cut off the heads of 130.
It's crazy. This creepy, like little sinister voice. Just
it was so scary.
Bad father figures, bad fathering strategy.
Yo, we listened to the intro to Fourth Chamber. Talk about it. Yo, this is a scene from a movie where a samurai, or he was working for the shogun as the main punisher of people who disobeyed the shogun. But then the shogun got scared of him and sent his ninja spies to go kill this guy, right? They kill his wife instead of him, and he's left with this baby. and he's contemplating, should I kill the baby or should I take it with me? And he puts a ball and a sword in front of his baby who doesn't understand words yet.
The kid doesn't even know what planet he's on.
So the kid is still crawling. He can't even stand. And he goes, choose the sword and you join me. Choose the ball and you join your mother in death. You do not understand these words, but you must choose.
Yeah, and that's some shit to put on a baby, right? That's some creative fathering strategy, right? So, just a note about this era that this, that this movie is about, and that they include in their raps. It's the medieval version of feudal Japan, right? It's like medieval type Japan, and things were really metal. In medieval,
there's some shit that flew back then that would not fly right now.
So you had these these little like fiefdoms, right? You had these feudal little governments, right, of these areas. There was no strong unifying government, and I think that the best way you could compare it, the best thing in contemporary world you can compare it to is like war-torn Afghanistan, right, where you have these local leaders and chiefs, and they are essentially organizing their local young people into these armies to defend against the next town and the next and their potentially overreach of their rule and trade, etc. Right? So it's that kind. It's a scary world to grow up in, and it's dark and it's violent, and it makes for fascinating movies and records.
Totally, and that snippet is so like. To include that, right? Like, so again, this goes back to like why this album is not for a party, man. This is not something you could just be like, oh yeah, we're all kicking back, drinking a few cold ones. Like, yeah, put some music on. You're not going to put Liquid Swords on. I mean, you might,
You would.
I would, but like I have. And then fourth chamber beat drops. People go, yo, what the fuck is this, man? But I think this is the height. It's so unique and so, again, there's a danger just in the sonic landscape of the instrumentals. You don't even have to hear them rhyme, and you hear like you're listening to dangerous music.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I absolutely love this album, and this is by far dirtiest and most menacing and violently themed album, right? From here on out, after he came out with albums that were way more woke and a little more elder statesman like. You know what I mean?
You can see a little bit of that. There's a couple songs on this album, which I think, and Ben, you probably could answer this more, but I think just about every Wu-Tang album has at least one, like, we'll call it like at least one Tears song, right? Is that true? Is that accurate? Because I feel like
a lot of them
maybe not meth songs. Maybe not meth albums tend to be a little bit more like party. Not party, but
But it is a common. Let's put it this way: it's a very common theme to have that one song that teaches a lesson.
Exactly, and this one is too. It's got the last one really. I got your back, which it's not as depressing. It's more like it's actually no, sorry. This is the one that's a little more depressing. There's one earlier in the album that's similar but not as depressing.
That's not depressing. I got your back, but you're best to watch your front.
Yeah, what's depressing about that?
No, nothing. That's good. That's
that's good. That's good. Keep going.
Everything is lovely.
I'm trying to think of what the other song is, but I think I don't remember. I think it might be Living in a World Today. But yeah, so they do still like the whole album isn't all like gangster shit and all violence and all that. There is somewhat of a message in some of these songs, where it's just like, yo, yeah, this last track I talked about glorifying the shit, but really like this is what it's like. Like
I think it's investigative reports.
Actually,
with Raekwon.
I found one. Ben, I'll get to investigative reports because that's actually the song that has that little tidbit I talked about earlier. But one of the songs I saw was Cold World, and Dex verse. He goes into some deep shit. Like he goes into a part about a little girl accidentally getting shot in the head and killed in a battle. God. And as if that wasn't dark enough, he then goes into, I forget what the rhymes were, but basically saying that, the cops are about to investigate it, but the kingpins paid the higher ups they paid the judges to cover the shit up. Basically, it's showing us like, yo, realistically, the shit ain't the movies, dog. Like, Like this shit is fucking real in the streets. Like, yeah, a kid gets tragically killed in the streets. That murder is not going to get solved, and in all likelihood, someone's going to get paid off, and no one's going to fucking remember about it. That's how really the shit goes down in the streets. You know what I mean?
And I love that about Wu-Tang in general, is that they would take, not only, again, they weren't the first menacing, violent lyric rappers by any stretch of the imagination, but they took the influence from G-Rap and from, a few years earlier, Onyx, that aggression, but they also took influence from The Message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. They took, influence from KRS and the woke, state, and they gave you a window into the world of what an inner city, African-American life looks like to kids like me who have no idea, right? Like I learned more about what it's like to live where they came from their albums than I ever did in a class.
Right.
But Benny, like also this stuff was going on like not too far around you, and Dion not too far around you, and not too far around me, right? Like there was a documentary that came out in 2015 about the 80s to early 90s. There was a precinct 7. It's called the 7-5, right?
Oh, such a great documentary.
I don't know.
Have you seen
that.
it, D?
No.
So what it did was for me, it opened my eyes to actual police corruption, right? Because I have a healthy respect for law enforcement, right? My brother's in law enforcement, and I have a healthy respect for people that put their life on the line to keep our society moving along, right? But like, man, there was some real crazy corruption going on in the police force, in the very professional, in my opinion, NYPD in the 80s and 90s that like totally just undermined the trust that people must have felt.
The level of villainy they paint in that documentary compared, I know that that's still a problem, right? Police corruption and violence, especially against minorities, is a huge, still consistently horrible thing happening in the world. But if you take a look at the shit that went down in the 7-5 that. It's like
just straight up corruption. It wasn't just, it wasn't just bias. It wasn't violence, right? Like bias and violence.
It was criminal,
but it was like just straight up corruption, right?
And
straight out of an Inspect the Deck track.
That goes back to what we were talking about a couple episodes ago. I think remember we started getting to like the conspiracy theory stuff when we were talking about Kanye, and like how like there's like a certain level of conspiracy theories was like, all right, that's like too like that's ridiculous. It may or may not be true, but like let's like to even discuss that, like people are gonna look at you funny. But then there's a level of conspiracy theories conspiracies rather that have sort of come out to be true, and we did talk about that specifically being one of them is police brutality and police corruption, where it's like, black people have been saying that shit for decades. For decades. No one's been fucking listening to them.
It's been going on for decades, right? And this particular, this specific documentary was focused on East New York, right, Brownsville, between East New York and Long Island. And
Dion, I don't want to spoil the story. The story, and it could be an incredible movie. It is one of those stories that jaw dropped. Like
I have to see this.
What?
I have to see.
That's how I felt. Like, what? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, crazy.
Yeah, it was some Inspect the Deck stuff.
Yeah, you're right, man. You're right, Gary. I mean, it's an excellent point.
And that's the New York that these guys fucking grew up in. Like, it's nuts, man.
Can I talk about, let's just, how I like to dissect the flow, right? Like that is,
I got something to say about that.
Right? To me, I just will not spend time on my own listening to a rap song / album where the rapper doesn't do something to excite me, to impress me, to spark my imagination, right? I don't give a fuck if the beats are hot. If the rap on top of it is subpar or maybe simple or maybe just not impressive to me, I don't gravitate towards it, right? So not only does this album have, in my opinion, RZA's best beats ever, just my one man's opinion, right? Talk about GZA's flow, starting from the first track, Liquid Swords, right? He says in the here we go. My minimum table stacks, a verse on the gamble. Energy is felt Once cards are dealt with the impact of roundhouse kicks from black belts that attack the microphones like cyclones or typhoons, right? So he said he changes the word typhoons
Yeah,
to
he
typhoons,
does. Yeah.
right? We were talking about that.
And even mic phones, like not microphones. He said
Right?
microphone, like
So
little
so
things.
much thought went into how can I make this rhyme
How can I
in
make
a
this
way
work? Yeah.
that works, and they'll know what I'm talking about, right? So he goes with they attack the microphones like cyclones or typhoons. I represent from midnight to high noon. I don't waste ink. I think I drop megaton bombs more faster than you blink, because rhyme thoughts travel at a tremendous speed. The clouds of smoke through natural blends of weed. Only under one circumstances, if I'm blunted, turn that shit up. My clan in the front one. Like that's a he has a on Wu-Tang Forever. There's a song called "As High as Wu-Tang Get," where he actually mentions his approach. Right? He says, I don't remember the exact lyrics, but he says something along the lines of, "Don't here with 80 bars. You know that shit is weak. Make it half the length and twice as strong." And that's just right. You're never gonna hear him bar up. Like Deck will go for bars and bars and bars, but GZA,
you're right,
is always concise.
16,
right?
20, you know.
He's never gonna go above 20 something. Right?
I think there actually is a song where he goes long once on this album. I think I have to look that up again. But you're right. Otherwise, you're right. No, you're absolutely right. He doesn't go long at all.
Concise, and so that first verse, right? That was somewhat just a few lines into the first verse, is so dense and so much to unpack just in those few lines. And that's this whole album of lyrics, man. Yo, he says in the same song, I believe it's this song, I flow like the blood on a murder scene.
Yeah.
Right. So
then he start a verse like that, I think.
It's in the middle of his second verse. I believe it's this song. I just remember it in my head. So he goes, right. Most people say they flow like something that is swift or like aggressive, right? But he's saying he flows like the blood on a murder scene. So like think about blood that pools out slowly and disturbs you, right? So just
and where are you, right? Are you in broad daylight? Are you outside? Are you inside? Do you see flashing lights? Is it evening, right? Like
basically describing the very first shot of The Wire.
Right. So so I flow like the blood on a murder scene, like a syringe on some wild out shit to insert a fiend. What?
Some next level shit, man.
What?
Man, on being concise, right? Like, so another gangster, Winston Churchill, he said on speeches, right? He says if I'm to speak 10 minutes, I need a week of preparation. If 15 minutes, 3 days. If half an hour, 2 days. If an hour, I'm ready now, right? So being concise is the hard thing to do, to be concise and effective. It's easy to just spew, right? That's not something this guy does.
No,
Can I just read you the entire second verse on Liquid Swords, the first track? Let's just go through word for word on this second verse. It's just pen mastery, okay? Again, I don't have the flow of GZA, so I'm not going to exactly try to rap it like him, but let's talk about these words, okay? I'm on a mission that N-words say is impossible, but when I swing my swords, they are choppable, right? So these people who are saying that what he's doing is impossible, get out of his way, that he can murder them in an instant, right? I be the body dropper, the heartbeat stopper, child educator, plus head amputator.
Yep. And that's taken directly from Shogun Assassin too, by the way.
Right, because the diverse role of the father.
Because N-word styles are old like Mark V sneakers. Lyrics are weak. What are they weak like? Clock radio speakers. Don't even stop in my station and attack with your plan failed. Get derailed like Amtrak. What the fuck for? Down by law. I be justice, right? That was his nickname. That's one of his law justice, right? So I be justice. I sentence that ass 2 to 4 round the clock. That state pen time. Check it. But the pens I be sticking with you can't state the crime. That internal rhyme is insane.
I know.
Meaning he's sticking you with pens and poisoning you?
Yes.
Poisoning you, but with his fucking lyrics. Like, he's on some, like, next shit, bro. Like, it's...
Came through with the Wu, slid off on the DL. I'm low-key like seashells. I rock these bells. Come aboard. It's Medina bound.
Yeah.
Enter the chamber. It's a whole different sound. It's a wide entrance, small exit like a funnel. So deep, it's picked up on radios in tunnels. There was a time when the radio did not pick up music in tunnels.
It still doesn't.
In the battery tunnel,
It still doesn't. It still don't.
Okay.
But yeah, no.
At least Jeff works there now.
Those last 4 bars, by the way, I picked those out. I was gonna bring that up. Thank you, because those, especially the last 2, the wide entrance, small like a funnel, so deep it's picked up on radio tunnels like that. You're right. Maybe that is something that kids today won't get, but that is.
And this is so decidedly the intro to his album, right? Just like it's him flexing, and then the last line, N-words are fascinating, how the shit begin, get vaccinated. My logo is branded in your skin. Yo, I'm sorry, right? I know there are people far more successful than or at least far more highly regarded and considered the GOATs, right? But some of these people in that GOAT conversation never wrote a verse like that in their fucking lives. And I'm talking about people who are on it in people's number 1 slots, and I'm not going to mention names. Never fucking wrote a verse like that ever. Okay? This guy is literally such a genius.
Yeah, speaking of genius MCing, how about Method Man on this?
Let's talk about it. So Meth's verse on shadow boxing, right? It's actually one of the more stripped down beats on the album, right? It's one of the least distracting, so to speak, or least cinematic beats. It's more in line with something you might have heard on a Raekwon album or on a Ghostface album, and Meth just slays his one main feature on this album. He just destroys.
Yeah, so what I was mentioning, this is like that's what he does. Like he starts in the middle of the bar, wraps it around the end, comes back to the next bar, and ultimately ends each bar in the middle of the musical bar. But like you said, like it sounds seamless. Like you listen to it at first, like, oh yeah, that's a normal rhyme scheme. Then when you really listen to it, like, oh wait, that's not normal at all. That's completely off the beat. But it sounds so melodic, and part of that is just Meth's voice. His voice is like fucking butter. But
totally. There's no surprise that he was the rising star. That Method Man was first,
or was it?
Well, he's by far the most well-known.
Yeah, he's a household name. He's the household name.
He's the household name of Wu-Tang. He was the first solo project to drop because his voice and his flow. His flow is so musical. It's almost like a jazz instrument. You know what I mean? He's so dope with the flow, man. Hey, we went on a really long time about this album, and I could keep going, but I think I don't know. What do you guys say about Last Licks?
I got so I'll give my two tiny little trivia items. Well, one's tiny, one's a little bigger, but keep go for it, man.
Well, I'm gonna take it. Oh, actually, no, Gary, it's your pick next, right? Or Dion?
I think it's my pick next. All
right. So let's go. So I'll go. Then Gary, if you want to give final thoughts, and then Dion, you take us out, and then give us your pick on the. Okay.
Cool.
So I'm very grateful, right? I'm very grateful we have whatever this amounts to. I don't know, but it's some type of platform where I could rant and rave and really rave about the artists I love, right? I love this show because, again, like I said in the beginning, at least one of us every time is pretty passionate about the album we pick. And I am, to anyone, if you're still confused, I am very passionate about the Wu-Tang Clan. I am obsessed. And this is just, for me, it's everything I want in an album, right? There's no sacrifice of your own vision. It is a complete, like no record label said, no, I think you should do it this way. This was not intended for radio play, even though it got it off the strength of Wu-Tang's name. It is a mastery of lyricism from not only the featured artist, but the other supporting characters from the Wu-Tang Clan. It is a Wu-Tang album, not only a solo album, it is a Wu-Tang Clan album. They're all on it. RZA's production is out of this world, outstanding. I don't think he ever made an album or a collection of beats that sounded like this before or since. This is such a unique and individual vision on this album, and it never gets old for me. I have played it regularly since it was introduced to me in high school. It is my absolute favorite rap album ever made, and it is in my top 5 albums, any genre, any musician, any era, all time in music. So I'm so glad we got to listen to it, and I'm really glad from what it seems, and I want to hear you guys got a little enlightened to it too this time, and maybe like saw something you didn't originally see or hear. So that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, Benny, I feel kind of the same way. I'm grateful for it. You know, it puts me in a zone. It puts me in a very special zone that no other album could really put me in. It combines these themes of 1990s New York and crime with medieval, feudal, Japanese, warlord culture, which is just like, that's very specific. No, nothing else does that except Wu-Tang music, and especially this album. So I'm going to listen to this, and it puts me in a zone no matter what kind of grown up, stuff I'm doing now, right? Like I'll be, kayaking or something, and I'll be listening to this, and it'll put me in the zone that is that very specific zone, and nothing else does that. I'm grateful for it.
Yep. And yeah, I mean, I'll third all that. I mean, it's just like any other Wu-Tang album. Like it's like you said, once you put it on from the first track, like you're in it, you're in the zone. It's got you trapped. Often you finish it to the end just because it's like, yo, I want to hear next. Even though I heard this album many times before, I want to hear what the next track is. I want to hear where he takes this. I want to hear what, it's, you keep having that feeling. And like I said many times, I think for me, it was, as much as I love GZA's lyrics, and I'm more of a lyrics person than a beats person in general overall, but the beats on this album is really what got me at first. Like that's really what made me love this album at first. And then doing this like deep dive, like really listening to the lyrics, and now it's like, okay, now it's complete. Now this truly is, it's one of the greatest hip hop albums ever. A couple little things that I was gonna take us out with real quick. Ben, you may not notice the Cold World, the main instrument loop. It's from a Mothers of Invention song.
Get the
Frank
fuck
Zappa.
out of here.
It is.
Oh my God, I got to tell Ian about that.
Yeah, that like, I believe it's from a Mother song. Check it out on who sampled it. But yeah, that's from a Mothers of Invention song.
I'm gonna have to find out, man.
Another cool little tidbit: the song "Labels," which is a big fuck you to labels, to record labels, which is amazing.
Real quick, can we talk about labels, because this started a theme in GZA's career. Every album afterward followed this theme, where he released at least one song where the whole rap, he references a completely different thing. Like, so in this one, every reference is a different record label.
Yep.
Starts off, Tommy ain't my motherfucking boy. That's Tommy Boy. And he goes down every single record label, and it's like a fuck you to them, but none of it is about record labels. It's just like a diss track.
Exactly.
Against these elements, and
he did make it a point at the end to say something positive about Geffen because it was released on it, but it was clear. It was like, yo, I'm only saying this shit because I'm on Geffen. If I wasn't on it, you guys would be getting this fucking smoke too. Yeah. it's great.
And so like down his career, he has a song, on. By the way, if you're into this, if you like this album, check out Legend of the Liquid Sword. It's an excellent album by him. And check out Grandmasters, both available on Spotify. Grandmasters is also excellent. Nice. He's got some other stuff too that's great, but those are the two to really check out. So he's got Animal Planet, where he talks about animals in the jungle. He's got a song on Pro Tools where everything's a car reference. So there's like something, it's kind of like, this is how he flexes, not necessarily with the acrobatic flow, but he flexes with, making you think. So
also the beat for it too is the most like 80s old school style beat of any song on this album. I don't know if you noticed it. It is still produced by RZA, but it doesn't. It has that RZA sound, but it's got that like that like kick, that like sort of hollow air kick that you hear in a lot of 80s, early 90s hip hop. It's got it in this, and I feel like that's on purpose, because like that was back. I mean, labels are still big, obviously, when this came out, but they were really big when hip hop was first coming out in the late 80s and 90s. So I think that's kind of an allusion to that. And the biggest trivia and best from this is someone tweeted out that if you listen to it, 85% of the record labels that he mentions don't even exist anymore.
Wow.
Which is hilarious. 85% of the ones he mentions in this don't exist. And then the last thing is investigative reports. There's an interesting thing, and Ben, I'm not sure if you know much about this, but you notice throughout the song, there's they keep the skits are these TV news anchors, right?
Yep.
And they're talking
News
about something.
reporters,
Yeah, the news reporters. So they come on 4 times in the song. The last 2 times they're talking about something relevant to the streets or whatever, like some crime that happened. But the first 2, it's a modern day newswoman, but she's talking about something that happened a while ago. What she's talking about, and I had no clue about any of this. There was apparently something called the Battle of Long Island. This was the first major battle after the America declared their independence from Brits.
Yeah,
right?
Started in Long Island, crawled up Brooklyn.
Well, that's the thing, Gary. Like back then, remember, Long Island was all this. Like all this shit was considered Long Island. So where the battle actually took place is like I'm looking at my window. Like it happened on Prospect Park. It happened in Greenwood Cemetery, Fort Greene. Like the reason these places are called Fort Greene, there was a general called Greene who they set up a fort to await the Brits who they knew were coming, and they didn't. The Brits did invade. Where they came from, they set up their troops. There's a point to all this. They had their troops set up in Nova Scotia. They brought their ships all the way over into Staten Island, set up camp there, and then I forget if it was daylight or night.
It's a good place to hide.
Good place to hide.
Staten Island is ocean.
Exactly. So they crossed over into Brooklyn, aka Medina, and they fought a battle for a night, and the Brits actually won. They won that battle. I thought for a second, it's like, oh, is that why Brooklyn is called Kings County because of the king? But it is because of the war. It's named after like King Charles or King Richard, like one of the people from Britain. But yeah, Brooklyn actually won that battle. Obviously, America ended up being fine at the end of the day. But I just thought that was really interesting that that's what she's talking about. Like she's basically talking about an old school battle with fucking bodies that happened in Brooklyn 300 something whatever years ago. The lyrics of the song have nothing to do with this, but like the underlying sort of theme of what she's saying and what they're talking about is like, yo, it's fucking Brooklyn. The block's always hot. Like there's always a battle in the streets every day, whether it's 1776 or whether it's modern day 1995. I
had no idea. I think that's awesome. Thank you for telling me that. I had no idea, and I think we need some type of soundbite for every time Professor Dion strikes. We need something to be like, Professor Dion strikes again. Hey!
It's funny because I didn't think there was going to be one, and I just started listening to this. I'm like, wait, news clip? That's weird. I started doing research. Like, wait. Battle of Law. What the fuck is it? I took a whole hour just going down a path of like doing research and finding out about this fucking battle that happened outside of my fucking window. It's crazy. Awesome. There's a few monuments around Brooklyn and things that commemorated. There's a statue in Greenwood Cemetery that's in the highest point in Greenwood Cemetery, which is actually the highest point in Brooklyn, which is another thing.
Well, that was the start of a real murk. I mean, I don't want to get too deep into Revolutionary War history, but like that attack and that wave of attacks drove the Continental Army upstate, right where I'm at right now, where they were waiting for the ships to come up the Hudson. They had cannons and stuff aimed at them, and the cannons stuck. They couldn't hit anything.
That's a little history lesson. So yes, and that's the point, right? That's what I'm trying to say. Like that's one of the reasons I love this album is because like, yo, there's some deep shit that he's mentioning. He's not even rapping about it. He's just including it as a random skit that you're kind of supposed to forget about. But like, it's not like something that you should forget about. Like that's a pretty significant shit. Like that's great. Like the subtlety of his genius. That's what it is. It's the subtlety of his genius because I mean, look, I've never met GZA, but like, I don't know how you guys feel, but every time I see him on TV or see him in a video or an interview or whatever, he just seems approachable. He seems like a chill nice out dude, just real approachable, but like he's got the fucking like the tongue of an assassin and the mind of an assassin. You know what I mean? Totally. And that's why I love him. That's why he's the GZA. That's why he is the genius. I know Riz is the razor, but that GZA mind is also razor sharp too, bro. Like that's
they form like Voltron, and he happens to be at the head.
Exactly.
So Dion, what do we got on the agenda for next show?
So for next show, I've noticed that up until now, with the exception of Kanye being a Chicago rapper, we've been New York heavy, which is great because look, we're all fucking New Yorkers, you know what I mean? Like we're gonna be New York heavy. I'm warning anyone listening to the show. The majority of the albums, or like a bunch of the albums we're gonna do, are probably gonna be New York based. Sorry. That being said, I kind of wanted to shift gears. Looking at Hip Hop Evolution reminded me of the '95 Source Awards, which was famous for. I'm not even sure if you guys know where I'm going with this just yet.
Oh, I know.
Benny knows.
It's famous. Yeah, I think Ben knows. It's famous for what happened with Suge Knight and the East Coast West Coast. Like that really was kind of like the beginning, the real true beginning of the East Coast West Coast feud, when Suge Knight went on there just talking that fucking stupid shit and just started the whole thing. Like that's him in the red suit is iconic when you think of the '95 Source Awards. But something else happened during that award show too. The South started coming up. So the group that actually won Best New Artist that year, even after all the West Coast to East Coast shit, the group that won Best New Artist was Outkast. And one of my favorite hip hop albums of all time is AT-Aliens. And I want to review AT-Aliens by Outkast. AT-Aliens had the single Elevators, which I will never forget. The first time I heard the song was also the first time I saw the video. It was like randomly on MTV. I was like just a kid at home. It was like a Saturday morning, and the video comes on, and I purposely I remember looking up at TV, and I never heard hip hop like that before. Like we're from Brooklyn, we're from New York where we get that certain sound. But I remember I first heard it, I'm like, what is that? I turned to the video, and the video was crazy too. And I remember being entranced by these two guys. I'm like, I've never heard of these guys, but I need to know everything right now. Like this is some of the best sound I've ever heard. So a good one. So I went into that. So yeah, so AT-Aliens. We'll go more next week when we talk more details. But that's the album I'm gonna choose. AT-Aliens by Outkast. I believe it's 94.
96.
Excellent pick. Thank you, Dion. This is gonna be a good week.
It'll be fun.
All right. I want to thank you guys for listening. You've been listening to Do It Yourself Music Appreciation. Again, I'm Ben. That's Gary. That's Dion. We'll see you next time.
Peace.